All right. Good morning, everybody. So this is my talk. This is the second year I've talked at conference, so I really appreciate you guys all coming. I know there's hundreds of choices, and you picked mine, so that's very flattering. It does build my ego up a little bit, so it'll be helpful if you guys knock me down a little bit, keep me honest. This talk is Data Decision Part 2, Organizational Change at Nationwide. My name is Michael Warling, and this is actually a follow-up to a talk I did last year. I wish the steps were on the other side because I'm going to walk. There's a shadow. Okay, anyway. All right, so last year at conference I did this talk, Visualization as a Means of Communication and How to Tell a Good Story. It's out there published on last year's conference site if you guys want to listen to it. It was fun. It was really good. But the basis of it is I kind of outlined these 10 steps from data to decision. We went through plan and identify the data, collect it, clean and enhance, understand it, experiment, apply logic, package the analysis. And this is where I thought everybody would really focus, because package the analysis is build that Tableau dashboard. It's a small portion of the whole data to decision stream, but that's what we do here at Tableau. So that's where I thought I'd get all my questions. But number 9, communicate and educate, and of course 10 makes it repetitive, revise and iterate. All the comments I got were on this number 9, because this talks about org change. So organizational change, when we're doing dashboard design, is actually more important than the actual dashboard design itself. Now, granted, you make an ugly dashboard, nobody's going to look at it. But even if you make the most beautiful dashboard and nobody knows about it, it's useless. So this is what I talked about. I broke it down. This is organizational change. It's training. It's presentation. It's things like that. And like I said, if customers are unwilling or unable to use the report, or they don't know where it is, or what it's for, how to use it, it's a waste of everybody's time. So I talked to Tableau and I said, guys, I really think I got to follow up on this, because I had so many people talk to me that I really want to kick it off. So that brings us to today. This is Data to Decision Part 2, and this is talking about organizational change at Nationwide Insurance. This is what we're going to talk about today. This is going to be a unique presentation because I don't have the answers. As a matter of fact, this conversation is about the things I don't know and the things we're not doing. It's much more about here's where we're at, and here's what I think we need to do. And I really would appreciate you guys' feedback to me, whether it's in a conversation today or email or anything like that. We're not done. So I'm going to tell you how we kind of did it, or what we're proposing to do. You might be able to pick up a few things, but I know that one business's plan doesn't correlate to any other business. There's nuances, there's changes, there's differences, everything like that. And we're always going to have change, difference. So maybe take one piece of it, take it back, or maybe you can give me a piece that I don't have. That would be helpful too. That's a really big headshot. All right. One of the things I like to do is start off tell you who I am. Whether or not you should be here listening to me is based on whether or not you trust me and think I should be talking about what I'm talking about. So I'm going to give you a little background. I started off my education as a photography. I went to Ohio State University, College of Business, and I loved photography. And specifically about photography, what I liked was finding the underlying layers. So you can see in some of this work, we focus on refraction of light, reflections, the details that are behind the details. I always think that a photograph is not just a pretty picture, it needs to tell a story. And if you can get many layers into that story, you can communicate a lot more with that photograph. I also focused a lot on emotion, conveyance of things that aren't surface level. A picture should give something back to you, not just nice, but it gives you an emotion, a feeling. You get that. So I focused a lot on capturing the essence of a subject and not just the aesthetics of it. The other thing I liked is that you can convey emotion with not portraits. In my landscape photography, I really focused on finding the emotion in things that can be emotionless. So, bright sunny day on a beach, it makes you smile. You can feel the wind in your face, or an angry crowd over Sandusky Bay across from Cedar Point. These are the kind of things that I delved into. It's what's behind that base image. Unfortunately, I realized that I did not like to work weekend, and I also like to have money. So photography did not work out as a career for me. It was about the time of digital photography coming around. You can see by the timeline. Of course, I just dated myself, unfortunately. But because you had to know digital photography, you had to know computers, so it was really easy for me to just segue into a customer support role. I worked at a hospital for a little bit, and then I actually moved into Nationwide Insurance, where I've been for the past 14, 15 years. If anybody's worked in a customer support role or help desk or call center, you know there's tons and tons of data. And it's very, very quantifiable. It's easy to see, if this goes up, that goes down. And it was a very CI-driven environment, which led to the point of, hey, we need some people to do reporting. You guys, I need a helper. And so hey, let's try a change. So I jumped into that, and I found that I had a knack for it. I really liked data, I liked reporting, and I liked kind of telling the story with what we had. And so I got a job in workforce management. And workforce management, if you guys don't know it, it's about making sure you have the right number of people to do the right number of things at the right time. So very complicated. There's lots of knobs to turn and things like that, very statistical driven, predictive, things like that. So I went back to school. I realized my fine arts degree didn't really equip me to do statistics. So I went to the Fisher College of Business, back to Ohio State, and I went for a business degree focusing in statistics. The thing that I recognized really quickly is I actually did have the skills I needed. So I'm gonna clarify that, because people are like, hey, photography, statistics, I don't get it, right? So photographers aren't like traditional artists. They are not creating something from nothing. It's not a painter or a sculptor. It's recognizing something, capturing that something in the right tools, in the right light. You are telling a story. You're capturing something beautiful or important. Statistics isn't that different. Statistics is really using math models, computations, computers to find that nugget, to find that something interesting. So this actually set me up amazingly when data visualization came around, because I had the artistic background, I had the graphic design knowledge, I had the photography, and I knew stats, and I knew math, and I knew data. It really put me at a really good spot. From there, I went through a couple of different roles within Nationwide and landed where we're at right now. I'm currently on a team, we call it kind of an elite support team, that pulls data from end to end. You can see the 10 steps across the top are where I derived my talk from last year. We have an end-to-end operations. We have data modelers. We have storage experts. We have developers. We have analysts, and we have visualization experts, and then strategists. What we found is that our data problem that we're solving wasn't robust. It's not like big data where I needed Hadoop, but it was complicated. And in order to reduce the complexity, you needed a small-scale shop of very skilled and very specific individuals. Well, we did such a good job with this that we kind of worked ourselves out of our day jobs. And so we started branching out into other organizations. We realized that we had the skills and technology and equipment to help small-scale business within Nationwide. So we reached out to marketing. We reached out to HR, claims. Hey, you guys have a lot of data on the business side. We're not IT. You're not IT. We are IT. How can we help you? And a lot of times our customers just, hey, we just need a place to land this data, aggregate it, and give it to me. I'll do my own thing. Or we just need help visualizing a dashboard. We know it's good data. Just tell us what to do with it. And so that's been really great. I perform this kind of inside consultant role within the company where people will come to me and say, I need help with this problem, this very specific problem, and I don't have the resources or the money to spin up a huge project to solve it. Maybe it's not big enough to even have a big, huge project, but let me help you with that little piece. Let me help you solve it. Nationwide. Nationwide's a huge company. We're a Fortune 500 company, Fortune 100 company, sorry. We've won a couple of awards and things like that. Our Tableau footprint at Nationwide is pretty huge. We've got 9,000 to 10,000 server users, about 90 production sites, and about 800 to 900 desktop users. And this is actually a month or so old, so those numbers have just been going up. We have adoption across a lot of different business units, such as HR, personal lines, commercial lines, marketing operations, et cetera, et cetera. So the first part of this talk, I'm going to tell you about what we're currently doing. And I think we're doing an okay job at what we're doing, but maybe not what we need to be doing. So I basically like to break things down. If you can tell from my previous talk, 10 steps, arbitrary number, I know. But today, I broke it down into 3 things that we need to do for org change at Nationwide. So education, community, and guidance. I'm going to make a challenge to everybody in the room. So this is going to be a little bit of an active listening experience. When we talk about org change, it's huge, it's big. I don't know where to start, how to do it, what to do. So I break it down into 3 things because I think that if you start small and do one thing, then you start that path. And if you do one thing, then it's easy to do the next thing. And if you do the next thing, then it's really easy to do 3 or 4 more, or convince somebody else to do that. So I want you to do 2 things while you're listening to me today. The first thing is pick one of these, and one that resonates with you or one that you think you can do something with. Keep it in your mind. So listen to everything I have to say, of course, but try and focus on one of these things. Take that back with you. The other thing is that everybody knows that we can't do it alone. There's one other person or somebody, multiple somebodies that can help us do that too. So I'd like you to think in your mind, there's one person that needs to hear this talk. There's one person that needs to hear this story. And try and focus your listening to what I'm talking about on that one thing and that one person. What that's going to do for us is give you an actionable insight to go forward. And that's going to give you the first step. You can go back and review this anytime, of course. This content will be available to you, but I really think that focusing on your individual problem in the light of my individual problem will help you get more out of what we're talking about. So what are we doing right now nationwide? With education, we do a really good job with things like data literacy and business glossaries. We basically want people to understand what data is at a foundational concept, even if we don't have to educate them on the technical expertise. We have a pretty decent community. We've got a user group, which has about 300 members. We have a monthly meeting that has about 100 attendees every month, and it's been going for a couple years. We also have a Yammer site. Yammer is kind of like enterprise Facebook or something like that. People talk, they ask questions, they've got groups and things like that. We have several posts daily, and everybody likes to answer their own stuff. They show off, they ask questions, everything like that. Guidance, maybe not our strong suit. One of the pillars, if it was going to crumble, this would be the one right now. We have a lot of word-of-mouth knowledge. We know a guy who knows the answer, and if you know the guy or he knows you, you got your answer. We have a lot of tribal knowledge too. So we've got pockets of really intense, experienced users that just try not to share it because they can't, or because they're not allowed to, or they just don't have the desire to do so. So again, these are my 3 takeaways right now: community, education, and guidance. All right. I'm going to go through each one of these, a little bit of detail. We're going to talk about some more things. Education, like I said, I think that when everybody understands what we're talking about, I think everybody moves further faster. A lot of times you run up against, hey, I think you're saying something different than me, but you're not really saying something different, and we're just butting heads, and we're not really making progress. So I love to start conversations, find out where our data literacy is, what data literacy can be. The terminology data literacy is broad, but it really breaks down to a common understanding between people and products and things. We also really focus on business glossaries. So just because you call something one thing and I call it something else, we may be talking about the same thing. We don't have to change our terminology. We just know where to look up the common term. So if you've got a business glossary and I've got a business glossary and they're both public and we can look them up, we can have common conversations. I'm going to take you guys through 2 of these little presentations I usually help my customers with. A lot of this will probably be repetition to more experienced users, but I kind of wanted to showcase it for you, show you how I go through it, and you can use these. Feel free to plagiarize me as much as you want. Like I said, I've got an ego, and that just helps me. So the first thing that really, if I'm going to get on a soapbox, what I'm going to talk about is when people talk about data versus information. Now, show of hands, how many people in the room have had a conversation about what data versus information is with your customers? Yeah, and how many have had a successful conversation? There we go, right, okay, good. So the other thing that bothers me is report versus dashboard. People use these terms synonymously, and that's wrong, and it's incorrect. And it bothers me because we're not talking the same language, and if we're not talking the same language, we're not talking about what we should be doing. Let me give you an example. Data and information. Data is Michael, presenter. The information you could derive from that is Michael is presenting. Pretty straightforward. The verb that goes with these 2 words is reporting and analysis. Example of reporting is Michael, February 29th, 1988. You could derive from that with analysis that even though Michael's 30 years old, he's only had 8 birthdays. Leap year, right? That's fabrication. The output of these 2 verbs is report and dashboard. An example of a report is a list of birth dates with related names, whereas a dashboard could be a distribution of hot birthdays by month correlated to significant events 9 months prior. Did we have a December blizzard that resulted in a lot of August babies, whatever the case may be, right? So when we break this apart, what it is really, the difference is who is doing the work. Some of your customers need a report because they want to do their own analysis. Some of your customers want you to do the analysis for them. They don't need a report. They need a dashboard. Keep that in mind. That's where we start with when we talk about the same thing. When we talk about what do we need to do, how do we change, then we need to know what we need to change and what we're doing. How many times are we producing reports when the customer needs a dashboard? Or how many times are we producing a dashboard and the customer says, why can't I export to Excel? You need a report. All right. Here's another really good example. We call speed to insight. So this is about why to use visualization. What makes visualization powerful? So we know data, we know reporting, we know all this stuff, but why are we going to use visualization? This may be something you're familiar with. I've seen a lot of people talk about it, but this is my take on it. So if I asked you guys as data people to look at this table, Superstore data, of course, find the minimum and maximum values between my products and regions. Most of us can take 30 seconds, 40 seconds, maybe a minute or two. We can hunt it down pretty quick. If I add color to this graphic, what it allows me to do is discount a lot of things that are not the high and lows. Granted, it's still comparative. I still have to look at some of the darker bobs and some of the lighter ones, but it makes my job a little bit easier, a little bit faster. Well, the question I gave you guys was, what is the minimum and maximum value? I didn't say do anything else with it. That was the business requirement. Eliminating the things that aren't the minimum maximum value can actually go a heck of a lot further to get your answer than any other thing you can do with it. Stephen Few, one of our contemporaries right now in data visualization, has this really good story he talks about needles and haystacks, right? Over the last 5 or 10 years, we've gathered so much data, just adding more and more hay to the stack. And our job as visual analysts is to find the needle in the haystack. And there's a misconception that adding more hay adds an equitable number of needles, but that's not the truth. We're gathering data about how many steps I took today. How's that going to help me over time? Or we know what my refrigerator has inside of it if I look at it. I mean, some of the stuff that we're collecting data-wise is not really solving business problems. But if you remove the hay that you don't need, it makes it easier to find those needles. So that's a key point. A visualization doesn't have to be flashy if it answers the question. Now, one thing we can do now that we've eliminated what we don't need is we can start to add shape. Now, shape and color together on the same bubble lets you start to see the next step. The next step of visualization is now I can see comparatives. If you look across here, I look at things like fasteners. Fasteners hardly sell any volume across any other regions, neither do labels. But I look at chairs, and I see that chairs is a big seller across all the regions. But then I notice a little blip on the south. I see, well, South region doesn't sell that much in chairs, but well, looking down the row, it doesn't look like South sells that much overall. So you can start to make these comparisons on the same page. Could you see that from the data table before? Absolutely. But this makes it faster and easier to see those comparisons. Okay, so if I get people along the way with me to say, yes, you're right, that is easier. I like that visualization. Okay, let's kick it up a notch. We don't need to use color and shape on the same page because they represent the same thing. So if we have a user that's willing to take that next step into this analysis journey with us, we can replace our color with our quantitative region. So now each one of these regions is showing a different color. Then we can compress them together. We smush them together. Now, this is a bubble chart, my favorites. What it allows you to do is still see those same comparisons. Look, fasteners, chairs, the bubbles are, the groupings of those bubbles give you the same insight as the rows of the groupings. I can look pretty quickly and see that red circle, which is the South region, overall smaller. It's cool. But now what I'm left with is an amazing amount of white space on my page. Now, does this answer your question? Yes. Does it answer the next 2 questions? Yes. What's my next question? We introduce a third variable. Now we put time series on this. So now we're looking at the same cluster of bubbles. We're looking at a time series, January through February, the months across the year. And now I can get even more insight. Look at this. Fasteners, they don't sell at all across the regions, and they don't sell throughout the year. But then look at machines. There's these blips throughout machines where there's a big dot of red on February, and then there's a big dot of blue on September. So why are they selling these big products? Are we running promotions? Are we doing something there? Again, you can still see your aggregations. Look at all your red dots. Squint your eyes a little bit. Your red dots are smaller than the rest of the dots. But now I've gotten this. Now, I would challenge you to say, if I gave you this same information with the 3 dimensions in a spreadsheet or on a table, you could find these answers. How much time would it take you to find those answers, though? Would it be worth my time to find those answers, and what value would I get out of it? I'm going to have a lot more hay than I need. So this allows people to get to their answers and the next answer much faster. Speed to insight. Information faster. So these two presentations that I give really go to that education piece. Let's make sure we're all speaking the same language and everybody understands what we're talking about. The next thing I want to talk about is community. So this is sharing, this is networking, talking to what we do, finding people to help you out with your problems, telling people about your successes. So like I said, we've got a Yammer site, and it's pretty straightforward. It's just social media, but it's social media specific to what we're talking about. People post questions. Sometimes they post answers. Sometimes they post silly comments. A lot of times people will just put up, hey, check this out. It's really cool. Or there's a talk that you should go listen to. It's amazing, and things like that. Like I said, several questions, several answers. It's a really good way to communicate with our community. We also have a user group, which is supported by a SharePoint site. So like I said, 300 plus users, monthly meetings. You can see our nationwide stuff going on there. and there's a mailing list, and it's great. We use this as kind of our funnel for our user group. And we also do a lot of networking between user groups, or between you members of the user group. So you guys are talking about this. I think you're talking about the same thing. Why don't you talk to each other? Or maybe we should talk about the same thing. All right, the last one, guidance. And like I said, nobody's perfect, and we're very far from it with this point. We don't have a whole lot of robust, formalized guidance structure right now. We have a lot of very pockets that are doing good, and some tribal knowledge, but that's it. I don't have any supporting documentation after this slide because it is what it is, right? All right. So again, these 3 pillars, education, community, and guidance. And like I asked you guys before, I'm hoping you're holding in your mind one of these things and one person that you can talk about it. This is really going to help you break it down a little bit. Okay, so what's next? Where do we go from here? So I sat down and I started thinking, where do I break this down? What do we need to do? What are my problem statements? What are my challenges? The first one that deals with education and community is we lack dedicated resources. And that's a very key term. So if we have a lot of people that are passionate and they really love what they're doing, they love the tool, they love the community, they can help others. They just do it because it's good. And even if you have leaders who say, you know what, take a couple hours a month, go ahead and push that in, do these other things, set up a Tableau day, set up a user group, it doesn't get you all the way. Until somebody's job performance relies on the success of a capability, then you're never going to see really good traction. You get these waves and humps. Like it's good for a while, and then I had other things to do, and it's good for a while, and then I got busy. So we need dedicated resources, and that's money. We need funding, and that's a big thing. The second thing that goes with guidance, like I said, is we lack a centralized point of contact for BI. So there are areas that support BI from a functional standard, but there's not a whole good place to go for help with just the BI tool. For example, if my computer is broken, I call my help desk. Pretty straightforward. If my database is jacked up, I call my DBA, fix my database. But what about the tool that connects those two things together? We don't have a good place to say, hey, can somebody show me the right way to do a left join? Or why is my right join not giving me the results I expected? You might know somebody, but there's not a really good intake system for that kind of work. So again, dedicated resources are a lack. That's a gaping hole in our strategy, and we don't have a centralized point. These two things are how we're going to focus what we want to really do with that. That's a very impressive visual. PowerPoint's come a long way, hasn't it? What I'm going to show you guys now is our business case proposal at Nationwide. This is something that's very wordy, and you can tell from my previous slides, it's not really my high point to put a whole lot of words on the page. So as I'm talking through it, I'm going to just give you these things. But then please feel free to pull it down or email me if you need to, and I'll send you a copy. This isn't public. This is not private information or anything like that. A lot of words on the page just because you send it to somebody and you can't be there to present it. I would rather talk to it myself, but that's not always the case. So here we go. The first thing I realized is that self-service support is wrong. That conveys a help desk or a group of people that are supporting an effort, and that's not really what we want to do. One, it's really expensive to do that, and two, that's not really the best way to do it because then you're pushing, this is you doing, not you, the customer doing, but you, the IT department doing. So I tried the word assistance. And assistance really, again, sounded like I'm going to pay somebody to help me do my thing. I'm going to get some assistance from that guy, get 20 hours a week, and he's going to build me my dashboard. Still not where I wanted to be. So I heard our chief data officer give a talk where he used the term guidance. And that really struck with me because guidance to me is really what I want to hit with this because I don't want to be a manager. I don't want to be a help desk. I want to be a coach. Think about a sports reference. I'm not really a sports guy, so this might be wrong, but from my opinion, a coach is not on the field with his players. He's done the game, he knows what he's talking about, but he's telling them how to do their thing. Their success is his success simply because he knows who to put where and how to do it. He puts them on the right path and lets them do that thing. That is the idea we want to hit. We want to have a coaching environment. So here's my problem statement. And I'll read the first couple lines because there's a couple emphasis. There's a gap in the support model for self-service analytics in the company. This is a big deal for me because self-service analytics is what everybody's going towards. If you can do it yourself, you're closer to your own decision, and you don't have to involve other people. You're more effective and more efficient, and it's going to be better results. The next sentence is creating a team of dedicated business intelligence and analysis coaches. I need to be coaches. Will foster adoption and uplift of the capabilities of analytics across the enterprise. It sounds pretty fancy, but really what we're talking about is if we have coaches, then we can uplift everybody and we're going to do better all together. So the bullet points here is Nationwide has inconsistent delivery. That doesn't mean that we're doing it bad everywhere. It means that we just have pockets. So sometimes we do a good job, sometimes we don't do a good job. Whenever you have inconsistency, it's usually because you're not on board with everybody doing the same thing. We also have a lack of onboarding and ongoing training. So this is really important because if somebody gets a tool and they don't know what to do with it or how to do it, then they just do the wrong thing, not because they're doing it incorrectly, because nobody told them it was incorrect. Again, we don't have approved or published best practices. So there's like, brand guidelines as far as what colors to use and icons to use, but there's not really a good place to say, here's how you build a dashboard for efficiency at Nationwide. Because our data sources aren't public data sources. Our data sources have their nuances. When I go out to our Teradata data warehouse, it's massive, it's huge, and if you really don't understand the table structure, you're going to have a hard time. So here's a best practice of how to join those things together with Tableau as your tool. Now, you can pull down SQL queries and things like that the team puts out there, but those are IT people. This is the big concern. An IT person has this kind of disassociation with the business person when it comes to self-service tools. I know my stuff. I'm an IT guy. I'm going to give you this tool, and it's the right tool to use. Cool. Your business user has no idea what the data is behind the structure. They have no idea the right way to do it. They've never even seen a database, let alone used one. So it's that disconnect of published best practices with Tableau, with Nationwide. And the fourth point, like we talked about, there's a lack of centralized coaching. There's this central funnel that we need to have that we don't. So when a self-service user needs help, they call the help desk. When they need help with a database, they call a DBA, and otherwise you're SOL. And that's not great, but putting this bluntly in front of our executives is really what we need to happen. So here's the visual that goes with this, right? We talked about this, but I want to show you. So Tableau is an amazing tool. It's easy to use, and it just jumps on. You can pick it up in 10 minutes and rock yourself out. So when you have passionate users, social media, word of mouth, you can support that curve. So you can see my user experience is going to grow as my volume of users comes out. It's great. Everybody loves the tool. There are people that do it on their side job just because they want to, and it supports it, and it's great. But what do we have with that? So we do some training, a little bit here and there. We have community events and all this other stuff. There's some documentation that's available. It's not huge. It's what you'd expect. So here's what happens, right? Your volume of users goes up, and those passionate users just don't have the time, effort, resources to manage that volume. Your curve starts to go down. Your user experience starts to plummet. You have people that are doing the wrong thing, like I said, but not for the wrong reason, just because they don't know what the right reason is. So we basically want to help fix that curve. And how do we fix that curve? So other companies, the distinction from my market research basically showed that funded centers of excellence are what really sets them apart. When somebody's job is on the line, Tableau will succeed if you do your job. That's when we start to see success. So this is the curve that we want to see, right? So we're at a point now where if we put these three pillars up of a funded center of excellence that provide education, community, and guidance, we're just going to keep going up. And the important piece of that, it's scalable at that point. As our user base grows and we have a structure to support that, we just make those pillars wider. We have funded resources. If we show that those funded resources need to be expanded, we expand the funded resources, and it works perfectly. So I'm going to give you three things that I put that are very Nationwide specific to our environment. So it's what we need to do, who do we need to do it, and how do we need to do it. And these could be completely irrelevant to you guys, but maybe you can see with our user base of 10,000, this is what I think we need to do. So what's our services? So these three things between education, community, and guidance. I think this is what we need to provide. Under education, we need to do some onboarding, some training, and some best practice authoring. Pretty straightforward. Community is where we need to put a lot of effort into because this is where we need to show the most growth. Drive interest, showcase use, networking, talent discovery, hiring. This one is really important to me because I don't know if you guys have had the experience, but we go out to hire Tableau developers, okay? And we get them in the door and we say, okay, show us what you got. And they give me an Excel chart in Tableau. Okay, not what I'm looking for. But the problem is that Tableau as visualization is hard to quantify. It's not something that you can call a contracting company up and send me a Tableau developer. It's a creative analysis. What we've learned is when we hire a Tableau developer now, we ask for a portfolio. I want to see a portfolio just like with an artist. So I see their dashboards they've done, and they don't have to be flashy, they have to answer the question. I don't know if any of you guys caught Ryan Sleeper's talk yesterday, but he does this really good description about making things beautiful and simplistic. It's about foundations and core concepts. And when you see somebody that makes this, really complicated scatter plot and bubbles, and it's really cool, I can't read that. I don't understand what's going on with it. It needs explaining, then it's not the best dashboard. So this talent discovery and hiring is something that we need to share out. So if we have a use case for in the business a Tableau developer, let's make sure we get the right one in, and not just somebody who's going to follow instructions and duplicate the work. The other big thing is skills assessment. This is what we do to support that talent discovery. So Tableau has this very structured belt system that they can help us with, but understanding here's a test, here's an exam, here's this, and you go up through the ranks. It gives people a sense of accomplishment. It gives you understanding of what you need to do to finish your goal work, and it shows progression. And of course, sponsored events from Tableau. Under guidance, even though this is our big lack that I talked about before, it's not actually the hardest one to accomplish, right? We just need to set up the framework. We need to help people with their tool selection. We need to help them with their content governance. We need to help them with their environment managers like licenses and stuff. This is not complicated work. It's really more about having the centralized point and the authority to have that centralized point. This is good. We all know how to do the execution, but until we're set up to do that, we can't do it. I don't know if you guys have user groups and authority, but one of the things we did recently is we did a server analysis review. So Tableau representative came in and looked at our server environment and gave us the results. And they weren't terrible. I mean, our server environment's pretty decent, but the dashboard that the Tableau guy gave us was very technical in nature. And so we can't really turn off a report because it's doing bad, because no one has the authority. It could be a business user is consuming that. That's their daily job. Even though it's terrible, they need it to do their job. But at the same time, it's like, guys, you can do better. You can improve. So we took this data from our server analysis, and we threw it out to our user group. And we did a Viz challenge, kind of like a mini Iron Viz at our Tableau day. So what we did is we had 3 finalists that put up their dashboards, and those customer sites and dashboards that we knew were the high points, they were right at the top of the page in red. And that was, I have no authority to tell you to fix it, but I mean, your name's at the top of the list, buddy, so get on it. So it was really cool. Things like that really help us from a grassroots movement, but at the same time, the authority of a funded center will give us the real, this is what needs to happen. Your report will be quarantined until you fix it. Here's how you fix it. Here's the resources you need. Let's move on and have a better environment for all. Who do we need to do it? So, the number of people, I think, is very important, because anytime you go and present a business proposal, somebody's going to say, well, how much money do you want? And we can say all of it, but that doesn't actually answer the right question, right? So how many people do you really think you need to be effective with the environment that we have? Like I said, 10,000 users, 1,000 desktop licenses. So first off, I think we need one leader, and we need somebody at an executive level who can have the conversation, who can have the strategic discussions and understand what the core concepts need to be, and of course, author the best practices and talk with the people that need to be talking to. I need 2 practitioners. These are experts. I want 2 people that can fix the problems. Now keep in mind, I'm not asking for dashboard builders here. I'm asking for dashboard fixers. I need people that know data, that know Tableau, and can go in and say, here's your problem. It's not always the easiest hunt to find these people, because I want somebody who is good, but how do you know they're good before you hire them? So it's going to be trial and error. And finally, I need 1 technician. So this is a lower banded technician that would be mostly helping with administrative things like email invites and things like that. But also I want to use that as a talent feeder. A lot of times people they don't know where the next step to go is. And so if you set up the structure of step 1, step 2, step 3, here's my career, go. It works really well. Also, as a talent feeder that could come in, I would expect that technician to be transient. So they come in, they showcase what they do, they learn, they move on to the business, and then they take that knowledge of everything we gave them out to the business. We keep doing that. So people keep going out there, and we're sending people out as a feeder pool. And like I said, when are we going to do it? So this is my roadmap. I broke these down into quarters, but they could be years, they could be months. It just depends on how you can accomplish it. The first thing we need to do, of course, is identify the talent and develop the onboarding and centralize our training resources. Easy to do, not super complicated, and we just need the leader to do that. The thing you'll see on this map once it's complete is that we don't need all 4 of these resources right away. So that helps with the cost conversation. I don't need to hire 4 people today, but if you let me hire 1 person today, and then a couple months later I'll hire another people, that helps them with the planning discussions. So our next horizon is kind of develop that intake system, outline our expectations, and start planning some community events. And this is where I need my technician. This is really just kind of grunt work. It's not really super exciting, but it's something that we can direct and, hey, go do this work, come back in a couple of months, and let's finish it out. The next horizon is actually start to do, right? So provide that coaching assistant, develop those roadmaps, do some skills assessments and things like that. And this is where I need my highly skilled practitioners. So at this point, we are really doing the work we're supposed to be doing. And this is where I really see us like, there's our plateau, and it's really good. But then finally, our fourth horizon is how do we keep going with that, right? We need to identify our champions, because 4 people can't do the work of an entire organization. We need to figure out who those people are in those organizations that can be our champion. If I train 1 person to do it right, he trains 2 people to do it right, he trains 4 people, it's just a big old Amway triangle, and we get our success, right? So this is where we need to keep that ball rolling. It's scalable, that's the point about it, right? We're going out, if our user base grows, we just grow this way. We can find more champions, and it works that way. That's the entirety of that self-service guidance, the business proposal that I put in front of my executives. It was pretty well received, and we're actually making really good strides already with it. I'm going to take you back out, and we're going to talk about one more thing. Again, how do we support org change at Nationwide? 3 pillars: education, community, and guidance. All right, take a minute. At the beginning of the session, I asked you to think of the one person, think of the one thing to focus on. And I want you to think of that thing you can do. And I really am going to give you a second to think about this. And then I want you to share this with somebody beside you. Go ahead and do that for me. No, I wasn't joking. Actually talk. All right, this is really exciting. This is really good. All right, I'm going to bring you guys back to me for just a minute. Okay, that's the stop talking. All right, I'm going to give you guys a challenge, all right? You guys talked about this. You have ideas, you shared your ideas, you might have got somebody else's idea and said, oh man, that idea is better than mine, I'm doing it. Okay, here's your challenge. Do it Monday. Do it. There's this law of diminishing return when it comes to this kind of thing. Org change is a bunch of small steps. You can't do everything all at once. There's no way that can happen, well, unless you have a lot of money, but nobody has a lot of money. So what I want you to do is go and do the thing you just talked to your neighbor about, or the thing your neighbor told you about. Do it on Monday. If it takes 10 minutes to send an email, if it takes 20 minutes to write somebody, go walk down the hall and talk to the person. I got this thing, can we do it? Because once you do that first small step, then that second small step happens. Or somebody else says, oh, that was I'm going to do that too. Just go do it. If you wait till Tuesday, you're going to wait till Wednesday, and you're going to wait till next week, and then you're going to wait till next month, and let's be honest, then you're not going to do it at all. So I really want you guys to go and do on Monday. And I know it's challenging, and I have no way to check up on you, but I will feel really bad if you don't follow my instructions. All right. I really appreciate you guys spending time with me. I think we do have a little bit of Q&A time, but please go ahead and fill out the survey. Let me know what you think. And again, I did say I'd like your feedback, so this is my proposal, and it is not my done deal. This is not my sold thing. So if you guys have things, please email me. Message me in the app. My email is just michaelwarling@gmail. So send me advice, send me guidance. If you have questions that you don't want to bring up right now, please feel free to email them over to me. So thank you very much. And we'll open it up for questions if we have time. There we go. All right. Go ahead.
What's the typical agenda of one of your monthly user groups?
Okay, the question was, what's the typical agenda of our monthly user groups? We have this little framework that we try and do where we do something conceptual and something technical. So we try and get in somebody like with a new product or a tool that could help us, such as like Snowflake or narrative science, to do something new and show us that. But we also do some technical things, like here's a how-to on bubble charts, something like that. Because our mix is very diverse. We have a lot of new users, and we have a lot of very advanced users. So we try to make the content equal for everybody in there. Go ahead.
Don't agree with what those other passionate users are doing.
Yep.
How do you?
So that's a great question. So for those in the back, the question is we have passionate users, but they're passionate about different things, and they frequently disconnect. The thing about passion is that passion is usually driven by one of two things. It's either confidence or ignorance. And a lot of times those two things don't match up, right? So one of the things that we have to do is publish those best practices, because you could be passionate about the wrong thing and have really bad results. So as it stands now, we can engage in good dialogue, but without knowing which one's quote unquote right, we don't have a good way to wrangle that. So that's why that best practices piece is in there. Any other questions? I'll take this one here, and I'll come to you. Sure.
What's the next step that you would take?
So that's a great question. So if the work you work with is protected, how do you build a portfolio? There's two really easy things that I like to do. The first one is I will get my dashboard and I will export the data source to a CSV and do some random variables to change it and then send it right back in. Then it's the same data, but it's not customer information, it's just random number generation. It's not customer names or client names, it's just random things like that. The other thing you can do is just fuzz out the stuff that I don't need to see, right? If I can see that you have a visual that conveys what I need to do, and you want to gray out your customer numbers or your dollar numbers and things like that, the little fuzzy bubbles or whatever the case is, I'm fine with that. When I see a portfolio that has that, that to me means here's my execution and what it does, and I don't need to know the specifics about what it does. You got a question over here?
You talk about unity competition within your board.
Yeah.
Yeah,
so the question was about the Viz challenge that we did at Nationwide. And we've done it a couple years, and we don't really have prizes per se. There is bragging rights that we have about that, and occasionally we can throw out like a water bottle or some Tableau swag that comes to us from our account executives. But for the most part, our passionate users just want to compete, and it's really good. So we don't have a good reward system that is necessary. I'm sure that once we get our funding and we have that, we'll have a budget to do things like that. But right now, people just really like to show off. I guess ego is a big thing, so it's really good. Do we have any more questions? I'll take this one back here.
You guys did a really great job of describing how you get your analysts to move from creating grid-based reporting
Sure.
to visual analysis.
Thanks.
I have analysts that want to do that, but they then struggle with their executives or the customers they know from the grid. So
Yep.
how do you work on that?
Yeah, so really that's a great question. So for those on the other side is we have analysts that want to provide the shift from grid view to visual analysis, but the executives are resistant to that. And the way that I do that is I really take them a step at a time. And sometimes it's a long process, but if I can have a grid, and this month I'm going to add in color to my executive's dashboard, and he's like, I still got my grid, but you threw color. Okay, fine, I got color, right? And then the next month I throw in the shapes instead of the grid. It's still in a grid, you still got your numbers, but look, now you can start to see this thing. Think back to the way that, this is kind of not directly correlative, but this is how I like to look at it. Back in the days when we did, the music piracy was really big, right? So people were stealing music, and the RCIA was arresting people and all this other stuff. Google came up with a solution that was, well, why don't we just make people pay a little bit of money for all the music? And it was just easier than pirating music. So that solved the problem without having to arrest people or do anything like that. So the same thing with this, the correlative there is basically give them a better solution even though they didn't ask for that better solution. And it does have to take time, because you can't just plop a bubble chart in front of somebody and say, knock yourself out. It's not going to work. But baby steps, bring them into it, make sure it's what they actually want, and it provides what they asked for and something else. There's another question over here.
If you're going to be in that leader role that you described, how close to practitioner level skills do you think you need to come to be successful in
It's a good question. So the leader role I defined, how close to the practitioner level skills do you need to be? I had an answer for that question earlier where I said you need to be the best. But actually I was listening to Ryan Sleeper's talk yesterday that I talked about, and he really convinced me that having the foundations of visualization and the technology itself is actually more valuable than knowing how to do all the cool stuff in it, right? I think that we can all bounce out to a Google search and figure out, how to do something fancy if it needs to be, but what people really want is the foundation. So do you know how to open Tableau and make a nice looking bar graph that can go if you can? Absolutely. But the more important piece is, do you know what it's capable of? And do you want somebody to understand what you're talking about? So, hey, I can't do this myself, but I saw it in this blog post. You figure out how to go do it. That's where I think we need to be for that leader role. It's a little bit different. Go ahead.
Do you have a data governance program within the company? How do these kind of manage?
Yeah, actually, we do have a data governance program within Nationwide. We actually have an enterprise data office that is actually separate from our IT department. They do run that data governance. They have a very stringent, robust, governance certification process and everything like that. So where we stand is on top of that. So the data sources we consume have been certified and are good data sources. Good question. Anybody else? Go ahead.
Along those lines, do you have like certified dashboards or things like that that people have to tie back to and
Yeah.
make sure the self-service analytics and things are going?
The question was, do we have a certification process for our dashboards? And the answer is no, we don't. The reason that we don't is because we like to kind of blend that variance between enablement, so letting them have what they want and getting it out there, and then obviously being good data sources. So you can go through a review process and make sure it's not bad data or bad dashboarding before you put it out there, but that inhibits that flow. So we've kind of leaned the other direction and given people the opportunity to make mistakes, and the dashboards may be a little bit rough around the edges, but because of our community where we can know that it's good or bad, that seems to be governing itself.
Do you ever get questions from executives saying, well, this team gave me this data and this team gave me that data? It's the same data source, but it's showing something else.
Yes, constantly. So I got two dashboards about the same thing, but they're different. What's going on? Again, that really leads back to that centralized point of contact, right? So why do I have two people making the same dashboard about the same thing, and why are they different? And that's because I don't have best practices published. I don't have people that are, combining and working together. And why are we doing redundant work to begin with? So that's really another gap we definitely have. Good questions. Yeah.
Any tips on performance testing programs? Because I'm sure you guys work with tons of data.
Yeah. So the question was about performance and load testing and things like that. It's a very good point. So what we have right now, we have an infrastructure team that supports the server environment itself, and they do focus on that. So they identify slow-performing dashboards, they identify our server needs and everything like that. But what I'm talking about is distant from that. It's separate from that. We basically want to set up a place where we can know that our server backend is performing the way it wants. We work with Tableau directly. We work with everybody to make sure the lights are on the way they need to be. The one thing that we have a hard time with right now is planning for the future. So we don't have a good idea of where our user base is going, so we can't build accordingly to that. So that's where we have these little ups and downs. So we got a lot of new users, we better buy a couple more cores, but that's reactive. We'd like to be proactive. And so the idea is I can give the server team the number of users that will be on next month. They can proactively align to good performance. Cool? Any more questions? All right, again, I really appreciate you guys taking the time to spend it with me. Hope you guys got something out of it, and if you didn't, well, hopefully you got a good nap.